Now, welcome to another edition of Refreshing Thoughts. I am your host, Chris Fresh. I love toys, I love pop culture, I love the 80s and 90s because I'm an old man and here I am trying to fumble my way through the internet and talk to you about it. You might know me from my podcast, Geek Dudes, and Hey, it's a podcast. And this is me attempting to challenge myself and do a YouTube channel talking about the stuff I love where I can incorporate visuals and stuff. So thank you for supporting me. And thank you to the Shine Worldwide for our awesome intro music. Heads are going to roll. You can find them on Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, where all good music is found. But I want to jump into today's topic because it's something that I'm very passionate about. No, it's not professional wrestling. I've talked about that before, but it does involve muscly people in their underwear. Common theme with me throughout the years, and that is He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I'm not going to try and put forward my cred as a He-Man fan because I always go, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to fandom. Ninja Turtles, wrestling, Ghostbusters, Thundercats, He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Machine Men, or GoBots to the rest of the world. Um, McDonald's Happy Meal, Muppet Babies, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. Like they're all. I'm a fan of so many things from when I was young that have helped form who I am. They help develop your personality. Your passions are who make you you. And it's sad if you don't have any passions. I've met people that go, I'm not into movies. I don't listen to music. And it's like, what what do you do? A, you must have a lot of money. Because of my passions, I have none. But I love, I'm always wearing my fandoms on my heart and on my sleeve, literally. And you know, He-Man is something, and I call it He-Man. I could call it Motu or Masters of the Universe, but I think when I say He-Man, you know what I'm talking about. Is something that grabbed my attention from a very young age. I The Filmation cartoon was so much fun, but it was the toys I think that captured so many of us. They had big muscles and weapons and weird characters and mini comics that came with it and stuff. And so many of us, I think He-Man was almost our first love of that form of toy. There were people that would dispute it and go it was transforming robots or it was Star Wars and stuff, and each to their own. But for me, my distinct real toy memories of an obsession was He-Man. Like so much so, I got myself a big boy purchase, thanks to Brett Owen of Radical Rewind and the Adelaide Comic and Toy Fair, for some advice and stuff. And I got the Australian print of the Superman versus He-Man comic by DC. And I am rapt to have this. Now, I know the actual, I guess, American printing probably holds more value, but it means a lot to me that it's the Australian version. I'm going to frame this and actually put it up on the wall. I love He-Man. I love this He-Man that I just got. It's the Master of the Universe Thundercats He-Man. I kind of wish he had a cape. He looks like he should have a cape. I like He-Man in a cape. It's He-Man forever has been a part of what I was into. Like when I sort of moved on from toys or was advised by older siblings and my dad that, you're too big for toys now, you need to move on, even though I didn't want to let go. Battle Armor He-Man was who was my He-Man. He was the He-Man on the shelves at the time that I remember getting a He-Man. I think he was my first He-Man. He was a toy that I kept on display in my bedroom and stuff. I kept He-Man with me. And some of my fondest memories are He-Man. And it's definitely for me tied into Christmas. It's getting He-Man figures at Christmas have very strong memories. I remember desperately wanting, I've told this story on Geek Dudes many times, desperately wanting Castle Grayskull. And, play sets were an expensive thing. And where I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money. And finally seeing a Castle Grayskull size box under the tree from Santa, Father Christmas, and ripping it open excitedly, and it's Snake Mountain. Now, I love Snake Mountain, but when you're a kid, you want Castle Grayskull, you want the good guys base, and I got Snake Mountain. I just remember being disappointed and talking into the microphone like that and playing with it. I'm charmed by it now. Getting the giant Super 7 one was really good fun. Um, but I have so many He-Man related memories. In My mum passed away when I was 9, and the Christmas before mum passed, two of the one of the last He-Man gifts I got was Dragon Blaster Skeletor. So that particular version of Skeletor always means something to me. It's He-Man means a lot. He-Man was my first. Uh, I use the term heartbreak, but it's a over exaggeration because I love the movie now. But I remember seeing the Masters of the Universe movie in the cinema and doing the Krusty Clown. What the hell was that? Because I was expecting the cartoon on the screen, and we love Dolph and we love um, the Cosmic Key and we love Gwildor and everything these days. But I think we all had that sort of feeling at the time. You can go back and look at it and go, Frank Langella's Skeletor is incredible. And some of the costume designs was great, and Blade and Sauron are sweet, and there were so many fun things you can take away from there. But I definitely remember at the time going, that's not my He-Man. So I guess, you know, as we grow through life, our perspectives and understandings and stuff, when we look back, we talk about the impulsiveness of youth. And, if I had today's brain, I'd handle this differently and I'd do that differently. And, I think our experiences with pop culture can sometimes we can go back and look at it and go, what an overreaction, or in hindsight, I love it. And the Master of Universe movie sort of falls into that. But as a fan of the podcasting medium, I've done podcasts for a long time now. Still not good at it. And new to this YouTube business. I have I should remind you, please hit like and subscribe on my channel, and please comment. It's going to help me grow. Anyway, um, you know, I wanted to hear people talk about He-Man. And that's why we listen to podcasts, isn't it? We can't have our mates around, our friends around all the time. Lord knows my wife doesn't want to talk He-Man with me. I wish she would. She will talk pop culture with me, but He-Man's not really. She's a bit younger, so He-Man and She-Ra, not really on her radar. But so you listen to podcasts, and you hope your ears develop a relationship with this podcast, and it feels like your friends are talking to you about topics that you're into. That's the beauty of the podcast medium. Now, it can create echo chambers and stuff like that, but that's for a different podcast, especially when we're talking politics. But the so I've listened to a few He-Man podcasts in my time. I've just discovered the Eternia 4, which is from He-Man, a new website that's popped up that I'm going to talk about. And I'm having fun with their show. It's four guys. They have a topic. They all each speak on the topic. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but you don't have to. But they're all pretty positive and share a love of He-Man. There was another podcast I'm listening to that, I've sort of bragged on a little bit on Geek Dudes recently. I'm not going to name and shame here. You can find them yourself and decide for yourself. But one guy is a real sweetheart. The other guy, he has these views that sort of bother me a little bit, where, if he wants everybody to be half naked. He wants the women to be sexy. He wants races not to change. I'm very rigid in his love of He-Man. And I guess that's okay. Like if Filmation, Masters of the Universe, is your that's your He-Man. I've got good news for you. There's a zillion episodes of it available. In fact, I think they're on YouTube for free. Well, nothing's really for free on YouTube. You got to subscribe for premium, and once you do, you don't go back. It's what I did. But that's not gone. You know, it's also not going to continue. Just ask James E. Tucker of Faking Filmation fame. It's there. I grew up as a little kid loving it. I have a bit of a hard time going back to watch it now. I love the iconography of it. I love, but the episodes themselves. Um, Now, I am a straight white male, but I love saying it was Masters of the Universe that made me gay. Because it's so campy. And I'm not homophobic in the slightest. I'm not threatened. Love who you want to love. And but I'm charmed by it. It's like, if if there is a gay side to Chris Fresh, it's probably developed from professional wrestling and Masters of the Universe. And I say that in the most loving way possible. And and people get really uncomfortable with that. They put something that's like, no, I'm into barbarians and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, I'll behave. Like it's He-Man's as campy as it gets. But you do get people that go, I never liked Filmation because I was reading these mini comics. And when I was reading the mini comics, this Filmation was nothing like, there was no Orko and all of that. And people didn't like Orko. Dirty Uncle Mitch on Geek Dudes, talks about how he didn't like Orko and stuff like that. Where for me, for a little kid, Orko was one of my favorite characters. And yeah, so there are people that like the mini comics, the Alcala art and everything is beautiful, and don't like Filmation. And then He-Man went away after Filmation. I don't recall a lot of He-Man in the 90s. Like New Adventures never really came across my desk. It's not for me. I can tell. I've got a New Adventures He-Man from the late great Darren from the Toy Power podcast from his collection. But I New Adventures of He-Man just didn't. I'm not even sure I knew it existed until many years after it was gone. And then there was no He-Man. And then sort of around 2001 or so, 2001, I guess Powers of the Force 2 brought a lot of us back into fandom. McFarlane doing Spawn figures. He doesn't get enough credit for making action figures cool again, Todd. I know everybody loves taking shots at him, but that's my opinion. The commemorative series starts popping up overseas. I didn't really see it in Australia. Maybe some Horde World or someone could correct me and go, nah, they did pop up in comic shops or something. I don't really recall seeing them. They probably did, but certainly not at Toys R Us or mainstream toy stores from what I remember. And then, the Mike Young Productions Master of the Universe cartoon came out, and I loved that cartoon. Snake Men absolutely sunk it in season 2, and they should have done the Horde. Take that, Ben Sachs. Shots fired. I love Ben Sachs. Go follow Shredder 1982 on Instagram. He's one of my favorite people and an awesome toy collector, and he's from the Toy Power podcast. That's one of my favorite podcasts. But anyway, to get back to what I was talking about, He-Man comes back with 2000X, and it's a bit more serious, the grown man. And I love that cartoon. It's so cool. The designs are cool. The Four Horsemen Mattel designs for the figures that they did were cool. It was awesome to have a bit more of a grown-up version of He-Man. And unfortunately, it just didn't take off. It's hard for cartoons in the modern world. That and the 2011 Thundercats, I really would have loved 5 seasons of, and got one of Thundercats and 2 of He-Man. And that went away. And then He-Man sort of went away again until Masters of the Universe Classics popped back up. And that sort of popped back up at a time where, my daughter was born. My son my first son was born, and he had a lot of medical complications and stuff. So I wasn't plugged in quite as much into collecting as what I was, and I wish I was because I would have been all in on subscribing to Matty Collector. Now I would jump in, but I've got a decent classics collection, but I'd have the set, I think, if I was as plugged into the world of collecting as what I did. But you had classics, you've had some comics from time to time. Like comics have been somewhat consistent, but what we all wanted was a movie. And wouldn't it be cool if we're going to have a He-Man movie? He-Man movie, He-Man movie. And then it becomes almost like the Chinese democracy of movies. Is it going to get made? Is it not going to get made? Goya's doing it. No, the Nee brothers are doing it. This studio has the rights. No, this studio has the rights. Here's an image of what He-Man on Battle Cat would look like. No, that image isn't real. No, the image was real. It was concept art. All of this stuff starts happening, not happening, happening, not happening. I have covered the saga and poked fun at myself about desperately wanting something that's never going to happen of a new He-Man movie for a long time. Then Mattel do something crazy. They do Masters of the Universe Origins, not oranges. Origins. And He-Man figures return to the shelves worldwide. Now, the one thing I could bitch at as an Australian collector, and I'm sure internationals would too, is the mini comic. They put English blurbs in the North American versions of the comic, but the rest of the world get nothing, just blank. They just get the artwork, no words, figure out the story yourself. What a bizarre decision. Like, call me crazy, but I think German people and French versions and stuff, they'll figure it out. They're not going to be offended at an English mini comic in the back of their action figures. But then the Australians, because we get the international versions of the figures, and I'm sure the British, the Poms over there, they're getting the same thing. We've got no words in our comics. So, some weird decisions. The Spicoli head on He-Man, all of that. But it didn't matter. It was cool. The Battle Cat's pretty cool. It's $14 at Toymate at the moment because they can't give them away along with Skelegod. So I'm going to have to, I think I'm going to get multiple Battle Cats and see if I can use them like clogs and walk to work on them and go, I finally rode Battle Cat somewhere. But there's so many, there's so many cool things like the Land Shark, the Battle, there's so many cool things in Origins that they've done. I'm not all in on Origins. I got a few, I've flipped a few. I've got quite a few of the Filmation versions of them or the cartoon collection. But at an okay price, Origins popping up there. And we're getting play sets, we're getting this, then we get new cartoons. We get the Kevin Smith Revelation and Revolution. I'm not sure which order it goes in. And we got the CGI kids cartoon. And they really brought out the ugly side of He-Man fans. And it was a bummer because I've seen Ninja Turtles and Transformers and Pokemon even successfully navigate generation after generation of fans. And I'm sure G1 fans go, "Bah, this isn't for me." And I know somebody that I consider a great friend of mine, who I adore, just won't watch for 2012 Turtles because it's not for him, which is fair enough. I bust his balls about it. But, I consider that perhaps the greatest version of the Ninja Turtles ever told on screen. The 2003 Turtles and, the Mutant Mayhem movie now. And, Transformers Prime is amazing if you ever go back and watch that. There's been so many different versions. And, Thundercats, when Thundercats Raw happened, I was like, oh no, that's not for me. But it's not like it was just like I can't consume it. That's a bit of a bummer. It's not that I can't. I just choose not to. You know what I mean? Like it's not for me. It's there. It sort of sucks if that's in place of something similar to the 2011. But what am I going to do? Scream at people that it exists? I guess you can because it's entertaining on a podcast and we're all looking for content. And maybe that's what's going on now. And I'm taking the bait, but there seems to be this This isn't the He-Man I want, so I don't want it. Like, as in, I don't want it to exist. Now, the kids He-Man, I watched some of it and I enjoyed it. I didn't watch all of it. It just, it was fine. It just, it didn't catch on. The Shira, the Netflix Shira seems really cool. I actually wouldn't mind going back and finishing it. I just watched it just we're oversaturated with so much content um, that I didn't get to finish it. But the Kevin Smith series, I loved. I loved. Was it perfect? No, but was it beautiful? And it was cool seeing these characters in a modern thing and stuff. Like, yes, you know, yeah, like, but people were so outraged at the first part of that they were tearing the walls down. They were burning their He-Man comics, not literally, but like throwing their figures out in the bin. Like, once again, not literally, but I hate He-Man and I hate Kevin Smith and this poor guy, like, it really affected him personally. That fandom was just so angry. And I sort of don't understand it because to me, we're in a golden age of He-Man. There's so much He-Man that you can find a He-Man that you like and enjoy it. You got a lot of money, Mr. Moneybags. Mondo's pumping out He-Man. You don't have a lot of money, but you're on a budget. Funko's pumping out He-Man. You like the action figures? Mattel's pumping out He-Man. You think Origins are a bit too much like the old ones? You want something a bit more modern, but the classics aren't around now? Masterverse is out there. You think Masterverse, they can't get the He-Man head sculpt right, and you'd probably be correct. Mondo are going to do an amazing He-Man. Like, there's so many options. We are spoiled for choice. There have been eras that there has been nothing really to choose from. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is thriving. And, I've had a stance of I'll believe there's going to be a new He-Man movie when I'm sitting in the cinema and watching it. And I kind of still do feel that way. And I'm pretty sure next year I'm going to be sitting in the cinema and watching it. And I have seen some crazy hot takes and heard crazy hot takes of this movie. Now, there's a lot of talk because the Barbie movie was a phenomenon, a one and done phenomenon. I saw it in the cinemas, fun movie. And there are, it feels like there is a section of He-Man fans, Master of the Universe fans, that want a 300, a Game of Thrones version of Masters of the Universe. And anything other than that will be a letdown. They want the mid 40s to early 50s version of He-Man. A, He-Man's not going to sort of survive with that because we're all going to die out. And not only that, they need to capture a brighter audience. Now, I know people hate it, but I've got young kids and I laughed at it. I call it the Rainbow He-Man. And that's why I say, Filmation He-Man's a little bit gay and it's good fun. Sorry, it feels like it's Melbourne. It was sunny when I came in here to record, and now it's raining. So if you hear that, it's rain. The what's up He-Man video clip, when I try sometime and I'm lying in bed. We've all seen it a million times. We're laughing, Prince Adam. Um, you know, People are so fearful that the movie is going to be that tonally, right? And do you know what's funny? When I watch Mutant Mayhem, spoiler alert, and that song comes on, I popped so huge in the cinema going, oh, damn it. They've taken such a fun thing of He-Man fandom and Ninja Turtles have grabbed it. Damn it, those turtles, and I love the turtles. They always just get it right, and it's one of my favorite things in that movie. And I sort of I don't quite understand fearfulness of He-Man being fun because like Rob Liefeld, the lifer, he came out and said he read a script of a good comedy that is in direct odds of its fan base. And a lot of people have taken that as this is He Man and it's going to be a goofy comedy and we're not going to enjoy it. And I'm like, part of He Man is for campiness and the fun side of it. That He Man needs fun to be He Man. Like, could I watch a gritty barbarian Netflix version of Masters of the Universe and enjoy it? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'd go, cool, get me a sword and yeah, I grew up on Van Damme and Steven Seagal and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone and stuff, we all enjoy action, it's thing. But I think for this thing to become a cultural phenomenon, sort of has to cross over. If it becomes a cultural phenomenon, we're going to get a lot of it. Um, and that's not a bad thing. And, when you get people going, He-Man's not big enough. And I want to address this as somebody that comes from the world of professional wrestling. Now, Daniel Benedict, great guy, did a fan film called The Fall of Grayskull. And he cast a professional wrestler by the name of Brian Cage as He-Man. And Brian Cage is big. He acts almost too big, in my opinion. And people were like, that's what He-Man should look like. And I'm like, no, he shouldn't. Do you know why? I would prefer a He-Man that's in pretty good shape and can act. Right. And with all due respect to Brian Cage, his performance of He-Man was so terrible, it sort of bummed me out and put me off the movie. It and that's my opinion. If you enjoyed Brian Cage's performance, I'm not attacking Brian Cage. I'm just saying the only thing Brian Cage brought to He-Man was he was ridiculously muscular. I remember I went to school with this kid, and he goes, "Look at me, man! I've been in the gym and I've got muscles on muscles." I was like, "Muscles on muscles." I go, "What are you saying about your muscles are developing muscles?" It's he was big in a bad wig and everything. And you've seen the ads of like ridiculously big He-Man, dancing with Skeletor and stuff like that. Once again, He-Man's a little camp. I'm sorry, it just is. And it's if that's what all you want from He-Man, you're going to get something terrible from He-Man. I'm sorry, you just are. So I'm going to upload some images of what we've seen of like little leaks from the movie. And this is sort of some of the first stuff we got. Now here you can see Nicholas Galitzine and sorry, it's escaping me, the actress who's playing Tila. That's perfect. Now I can understand the fear that they're on Earth, right? I think the story is going to be Turner in crisis. It's like Superman. Send the baby to Marlena's home planet because she's from Earth to save the future of Eternia. And Tila comes down to Earth because they got to get their champion and get him back to Eternia. Now, I could be completely wrong. This is me, fan, telling the story of what I think it's going to be. And, He-Man will get back to Eternia and, wrestle with who he is, which is a great hero story, wrestle with who he is and eventually take the sword and say, by the power of Grayskull, become He-Man, ride Battle Cat and defeat Skeletor and his forces of evil. And that's a good time. And there's going to be a lot of laughs along the way. The only real bummer is Jared Leto being cast as Skeletor. That was a terrible move. It's a self-own, a little bit like keeping Ezra Miller on as the Flash, unnecessary. But I think he could maybe do a good Skeletor, absolutely. But I think why go for the problematic? But anyway, to me, like, look at that. That looks fantastic. Like, even giving him the pink shirt, that he'd wear in an office and stuff. I think Tila looks amazing. Now, I'd hear people go, "Oh, Tila's wearing pants. This is ridiculous." It's like, does she really need to like have her legs out nonstop? Like, I don't know if people are aware of this. There are a zillion adult websites that you can go look at whatever you want to look at. You don't have to get it from your He-Man movie. It's cool, you know. Like, as somebody that's had a daughter that struggled with body image issues, it's okay to not constantly have it drilled into you that you need to look a certain way. And then, we got our first looks at He-Man and the Power Sword. Now, I see that, and I see a pretty well-built He-Man holding an awesome-looking power sword with gauntlets and everything. Like, that looks like He-Man to me. Pretty sure we're gonna get a pretty good-looking He-Man on screen, and not just facially, like, he's gonna look like that. But then we had all this outrage about this, and, you know, I think forwardernia.com has merged into this new He-Man website I'm talking about. This image of He-Man turned up, and it's from the back, and I don't know, looks pretty good to me. Like, the hair's a little goofy, but He-Man's always had goofy hair. That looks like a muscular dude carrying around a sword in a pretty He-Man-y outfit. Like, and there were so many dudes of my shape going, this guy's not big enough. This guy's not jacked enough. This guy, what is he, a He-Man for ants? It's like, who are you, Vince McMahon in the '80s, going, "Goddamn, pal, you got to put on some size, Rick Rude." Like, it's ridiculous. He looks great. The power sword looks great. That outfit looks great. Alison Brie playing a campy, evil Lynn is going to be amazing. Like, there is going to be so much fun in this movie. He-Man needs to be fun. It's not 300. I really don't want to see He-Man stab someone with the power sword and blood go flying. That's not who He-Man is or what he's about. And if you don't believe me, ask Lou Scheimer, the late Lou Scheimer, like, what he thought He-Man should be. Because that's the filmation that you're married to, right? I think this looks great. And just today, news just in, he-mania.com. I've actually been going to this website quite a bit. We've got some great He-Man news. You should go check it out. A toy sort of convention, sort of showing retailers and potential buyers He-Man product. We're getting a look at the movie He-Man. I don't know. See, people are going, it's Nicholas Galitzine as He-Man on Battle Cat. I could be wrong. Call me crazy. I'm not wearing glasses. To me, it maybe looks like a cartoon version, because there was talks of animation shorts of movie He-Man on Battle Cat. I'm looking at it going, "What, Battle Cat's got the world's longest neck? Like, what's going on here?" Yeah, I don't have an arrow pointer to show, but it looks like the neck's really long. But the image looks weird to me. But it was a cardboard cutout, sort of sitting in a Castle Grayskull on that. But the fact we can get Battle Cat in a movie is amazing. Oh, look, there's Battle Cat's mask up there. Oh, that looks cool. I just realized top right is sort of like the face. Like, from a design perspective, for me personally, I didn't really like the long nose version of the Revelation Battle Cat, the toy and everything like that. I didn't like the helmet. Who cares? I'm just saying, like, I prefer the vintage look of Battle Cat, but I still liked it. It should, like, let me ask you, like, this is where we're all torn. Should Cringer slash Battle Cat talk? Should there be a Cringer, or should it always be Battle Cat? I don't know. There's been different versions of both. But yeah, I don't know. I just think we're in a good spot as He-Man fans. And rather than fight and argue over it, as fandom tends to do, let's embrace it. Let that campiness rain down on us. Let us laugh at a He-Man film, but also enjoy the action. It's okay to do both. You don't want blood. You don't want fatalities in a Masters of the Universe movie. It was never what Masters of the Universe was about, right? It is fun. It is campy. It has action. It makes you go, yeah. And that's what He-Man is. And we're in a golden age. You turn down the aisles, even here in Australia, there are toys everywhere. There are comic books. We're about to be licensed up the wazoo. That I'm scared for my 2026 financial year. Like, we have awesome items in our collections. We have so much media we could take in, and next year we get to see He-Man on the big screen. Masters of the Universe is thriving. If something's not for you, focus on the stuff that is, and you will have a good time, Because when you were a little kid, to imagine that we didn't have to let this go and it will be with us forever would have been a dream. And that dream is now reality. So yeah, anyway, they're my opinions. What's your opinions? Leave comments underneath the video. I'd love to hear, what are your thoughts? Are you excited for the movie? Am I the crazy one? And we should be hating this. I don't think so, but what do you think? Are you excited? What are you excited about? Comment underneath the video below, click like and share it. And if you have the means, you can support the channel, help us keep the lights on. Patreon.com/C/refreshing thoughts podcast/membership, where for $5 Australian a month, you can help subscribe and help me pay for Streamio because it's really expensive. I am Chris Fresh. Thank you for watching the channel. And by the power of Grayskull, this movie is going to be a good time.